Thank you, Michael. Truth be told, my origins and background are from Central Long Island, which the last I found, I realized was New York. Those people who are from not Queens or Brooklyn don't consider Long Island to be part of New York. So my apologies. I have a half an hour, and in that period of time, I'm going to ask you, the first thing to do is to get your handheld, get your phone, and put it in your hands. And then I'm going to ask you to go to the israeled.org website, ISRAEL, Israel, and then ed.org, israeled.org website. And the reason for that is I'm going to make reference to some materials that are on the website. Before doing so, curiosity has me wanting to ask you if any of you believed before October 7th that there was a possibility of Israel and the Palestinians sharing the land west of the Jordan River. Did any of you believe, or were you advocates of, or were you hopeful for a two-state solution? Were any of you? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, fine. Now, how many of you knew anything about, in terms of knowledge of what Hamas stood for? Before October 7th, how many of you knew remotely what their ideology was? Can I see hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Fine, great. That's a good beginning. One of the critical variables in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that there have been, over time, within the Palestinian Arab community, a mixed understanding or a mixed attitude or attitudes toward Israel, Jewish state, or Zionism. Going back to the beginning of the British Mandate in the 20s, Palestinian Arab leaders articulated a total opposition to Zionism or to Israel. Or they didn't know about Israel, just to Zionism or to any Jewish presence west of the Jordan River. And on the website, if I can try and juggle two things at the same time, on the website, you'll find, if you scroll down, go down to latest content, and there's a picture you can see on your handheld. There's a picture of Arafat on one side and Yahya Sinwar on the other. And if you take a look at the mixed Muslim and Arab views, which I'm not going to ask you to go through here, you'll find quotations that began back in the 20s and 30s, running right down to Hamas today, in which Israel has been either totally rejected or recognized, as we know, by 6 Arab states. So there's nothing that's consistent about Palestinian Arab attitudes toward Israel or toward Zionism over the last 100 years. Just a minute, let me finish. Israeled.org. Scroll on down, and you'll see a picture of Arafat. You don't have Israeled.org? Well, I got it. I have it on mine, so it must exist. Because I'm about as technologically competent as a dinosaur. Part of Hamas's ideology was to demonstrate and show that Israel is artificial, fake, and not legitimate. It was an attitude that the Palestinians had way before they had an affiliation with Iran, which came after the 1979 revolution. Now, not all Palestinians believe that Israel should go away, though a majority of them have felt over time it would be best if a Jewish state didn't exist. The artificiality of Israel, its fake reality, was predicated on the notion that Jews are not entitled to have a place of their own. They're not entitled to have a state of their own. They're not entitled to have a territory of their own, because the Jews are not a people. The Jews are only a religion. Only a religion. And as only a religion, they can only be understood in the context of traditional Islam, which saw Jews as a tolerated minority. You'll find in these quotations, if you scroll down to 1947, you'll find a quotation from the man who was head of the Arab League, Azam Pasha. And Azam Pasha was approached by Zionist leaders in September of 1947 and said, you know, it's still time for a compromise. It's still time that we can come to a logical, contractual solution to the differences between us. And Azam's response was, Mr. Horowitz, actually Abba Eban was with him, Mr. Horowitz, we're not in a compromising mood. We have no desire, it's a September 47, we have no desire to reach an agreement with you. Whatever will happen between us will happen because of war. And you are no different than the Crusaders. You're here for a temporary period of time, and you will ultimately leave this place. And he went on to say quite explicitly, you know, Mr. Horowitz, David Horowitz was a member of the Jewish Agency, Mr. Horowitz, we may lose Palestine, but we will regain it. We will regain it. There's no question that we will regain it ultimately. Now, the whole idea of what Azam Pasha was articulating was what the Saudis were articulating at the time to Harry Truman. You can't recognize Zionism. The Jews don't have a place here. And then Nasser, before the '67 war, will say, we have to restore Palestine to the Palestinians. We have to get rid of the state of Israel. Israel doesn't have a right to be here. And then the '67 war changes everything. Israel gains territory that it never had before. West Bank, Gaza Strip, portions of Jerusalem, Golan Heights, Sinai. Nasser dies in '70, and a new man comes to power, Sadat, and he said, I don't want to advocate just for the Palestinians anymore. I want to advocate for Egypt. I want to advocate for my people. I want to change the society. I want to withdraw from an alliance with the Soviet Union. I want to help my economy and give up this Arab socialism, which doesn't work. I'd like to turn to the United States. And he says it to some of his colleagues. He says it to Henry Kissinger before the 1973 war. And Kissinger says, you know, I can't help you right now. We have to wait until after the Israeli elections at the end of October of 1973. And Sadat goes to war. He doesn't go to war to eradicate the state of Israel. He goes to war to get the United States' attention that says, it's now time to start negotiation. And Sadat will, for the next 6 years, from 73 through 79, through Carter, finally end up with the Camp David Accords, Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty. Jordan will sign a treaty in '94, then the Abraham Accords in 2020. In '79, the Shah falls, Iran comes to power, the Islamic Republic comes to power, and a core belief in its ideology is Israel is an artificial creation, Israel is fake, the Jews don't constitute a nation, they don't constitute a people, they're only a religion. And those Palestinians who have had this view over time cleave to this Iranian ideology, this Islamic ideology that says all of the land west of the Jordan River is ours. It doesn't belong to the Jews. Hamas went to war in order to show to the world that Israel is fake, that Israel will cringe, that it will be reduced to size after we prove to the Israelis that we are not going away and we're not going to give up this notion that there should be agreements between Israel and the Palestinians. Hamas wants to capture the attitudes of the Palestinian national movement, and it wants to say to the folks living in Ramallah, what you have done in terms of collaboration and collusion with the Israelis is improper and inappropriate. We're totally opposed to it. We're totally opposed to any accommodation with the state of Israel, and we certainly don't want the Saudis, who are inching closer to an agreement with Israel, to even come close to a defense arrangement, whether it's informally or formally or through the United States. Hamas says, no, we can't permit it, we can't allow it, and its goal is to delegitimize the state, to destroy the state, to kill Jews where possible, and to undermine the attitude of Israelis that they should have a state. He wants, and Hamas wants, and Sinwar wants, and Iran wants, and Hezbollah wants, and the Houthis want, all the affiliates of Iran, all of the insurgencies and the militants that are associated with Iran, they want Israel to go away. They want to delegitimize it, and they want to hurt Israel's position in the international media if at all possible. Now, it's a major goal of Hamas. Does Hamas think it's going to succeed? Well, it thought maybe that Hezbollah and the Iranians and other allies would come along to their support. Hezbollah shot missiles at Israel's northern civilian villages, drove 65,000 Israelis to the center of the country, and Sinwar and Hamas said, we're being successful. Not only are we being successful, but the Israelis are replying with force on Gaza, and they are killing civilians, and Israel's position in the international media is slowly getting less and less. So in that sense, Sinwar and Hamas are, at least at the beginning, for the first 60, 90, 120 days, reasonably successful. Israel's immediate reply is to destroy Hamas militarily and destroy its administrative structure. Anyone who thinks that Hamas is acting independently of Iran is wrong, but Hamas did make the decision when to go to war by itself. Iran did give money and material and training to Hamas over time, that's for sure. And a train of thought within the Palestinian Arab National Movement is, if the Europeans hadn't been so harsh on the Jews, we would never have had this problem here in Palestine. It's European guilt that's being satisfied by the Europeans and the international community supporting the state of Israel. Another train of thought that runs through this portion of the Palestinian Arab national belief is Israel can only succeed when it has support from a foreign power. The British helped the state come into being. The French and the British provided material and weapons to Israel in the 50s and 60s. The United States and Kennedy provided Hawk missiles. And in the 80s and in the 90s, the United States added more men, more training, more material, more cooperation, more intelligence sharing. And Hamas is pointing to see, you see, Even Biden now is sending aircraft carriers. He even has a nuclear submarine that's running through the Suez Canal. You see, we're right. They're only here because they're fake. And look, Iran actually attacked Israel in April and again in October. And who helped Israel knock down these drones and these missiles? The United States, Great Britain, Jordan. It didn't matter. But Israel is fake. Even though they may be losing the war, they haven't lost their ideology. Now, if you tell that story to your children, to young adults, to college-age kids, to your peers in Jewish organizations, they're going to say, well, it looks like they had this long-term belief that said Israel needed to go away, that Israel was artificial. Now, I'm asking you, if you're telling the story, be sure you tell this part of the story. But now I want to tell you the other side of the story. There was a very famous newscaster or commentator. What was his name? Paul Harvey, right? Paul Harvey. He didn't always reflect my points of view, but he was fun to listen to. And Harvey would say, he'd go for a commercial break, and before the commercial break, he'd say, now for the rest of the story. Well, here's the other half of the story. If you continue on on israeled.org, you will find here on the homepage, you'll find a document that says composite statements of the KKL, JNF, Keren Kayemet LeYisrael, discussions about lands to purchase 1926 to 1948. And then if you go down further, Jewish National Fund discussion of land purchase in the Negev in Beersheba, 1926. Now, why is this relevant? Because the work of the Keren Kayemet and the work of the Jewish National Fund, and you read these documents and you read the summary, you say, whoa, I mean, already in the 20s, the Jewish National Fund knew how many offers were being made to them for the purchase of land? You really mean that we had a choice in 1937 to choose where we wanted to buy land because there were so many offers and we didn't have enough money to consecrate all the offers that were offered? Yes. And you'll see a discussion between Ben Gurion and Weizmann and Yosef Weitz and Yehoshua Hankin and Abraham Granovsky, critical individuals who served in the Jewish National Fund. You'll find them saying, you know, I think we need to buy land up in the Galilee because we need to have land that's adjacent to the headwaters of the Jordan River. Or we need to buy land in the corridor between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem because we need to have a land access between the coast and Jerusalem. And what you see is you see decisions made based on strategy, not based on the absence of offers. Now, how do I know all this? Because my dissertation was entitled The Land Question in Palestine, 1917 to 1939. And I wrote a book about it. And if you still want to buy the book, it's in paperback at North Carolina Press. Just read the concluding chapter. If you read the first 7 chapters, you don't have to buy Ambien. I can assure you. Like every dissertation, it's for nocturnal use as an RX. Right? But what I've also did was I also collected as many of the minutes of the Jewish National Fund as I could from the early 1900s right through 49. And I translated them all from Hebrew into English. Now, not all of them were in Hebrew, some of them were in German. Thank heavens my parents came from Germany. I understood a lot of German growing up. Translating the German to the English was not difficult. I also used the dictionary, of course. Translating the Hebrew to the English was not difficult, but I used the dictionary, of course. But the point of it is, Israel is anything but fake. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the territory. And what we learned after October 7th is that the same quality that drove the Zionists to build the state initially, perseverance and commitment to a belief, became resilience, and not leaving, not vacating, not going anywhere, but staying put. Because as Golda Meir said, when some Palestinian leader said, you have to go back to where you came from, Golda answered rhetorically, so where is that? In other words, once the Zionists came from diverse immigrant backgrounds, they welded themselves into this national identity called Israelis. And they brought with them all of their immigrant experiences and all of the cultural differences, and they blended them together, and not always with great ease, and sometimes with great dispute. The very presence of the parliament today in Israel is representative of the different points of view, which are representative of all the points of view of all the Jews who came from different geographic regions from around the world. Now, if I teach October 7th, now I stopped teaching in August, but haven't stopped teaching online. If I were to teach it, and I were to ask others to teach it, I would be sure they lay out what the premises were of the elements in the Palestinian Arab National Movement that saw Israel as fake, as not being legitimate, of not having territory upon which to base its credibility. And then I would talk about, you see the documentation I have here? I have the documentation in Hebrew, I have it in English, I have translated documents from the Arabic newspapers of the early 1930s that says, we have to stop our people from selling land to the Jews. Don't our people know that these individuals are going to create a state and our land will not be available to generations to come? It's written in Arabic, 31, 32, 33. I haven't even talked about 39 to 45. The state of Israel did not come about simply because 6 million people died. It was a catalyst. It was important for the international community to realize that the Jews still needed a territory. But the notion of Zionism was born when we received the Torah at Sinai. How many times does the word Zion appear? How many times does the word Jerusalem appear? This is not a new concept. And when you make the case for the state of Israel, you have to connect yourself to Torah Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, and Medinat Yisrael. You got it? Clear? I realize it's 1:43. I realize there is a plenary session underway. What I'd like to have you do is, if Catherine, if you would come up here and if you would distribute them to the folks on this side, and if you, sir, would do the same on this side, and let me explain to you what's here. I had something called the Center for Israel Education. That's the website. There are 55,000 people who come to the website a week. 55,000. And why is that? Because it's all content. It's all content-based. And we have created, if you look on one side, we created 4 sets of videos on the Hamas's, on the current conflict. And then on the other side, at the bottom, or at the bottom of that side, you will see that on December 2nd, 11th, and 16th, I'm going to do a presentation on the history of Israel, right down to the present, down to Israel's 100th anniversary. It's virtual, and it's also in person. It's all there for you to access to through the QR code. I welcome you to join. I'm sorry I have to end so quickly, but that's it.